Hello, I'm Jim Kruger, President and CEO of Freeborn-Mower Cooperative Services. For 75 years, our member-owned cooperative has connected the rural people of this region, not just through the physical structure of poles and wires, but through a commitment to work together to improve our quality of life. Freeborn-Mower Cooperative Services was built strong through cooperation. I invite you to sit back and enjoy our 75th anniversary video. It is a commitment to the cooperative spirit, an idea that brought electricity to rural America.
Most of us cannot remember life without electricity. Fewer yet would care to go back to those dark days of the early 1930s. While the Great Depression was taking its toll on all Americans, life was very different between rural areas and city living where Central Station electric service was available. In 1936, 90% of rural homes and farmsteads were without electricity. This kept the economies of rural areas entirely dependent on agriculture and the daily cycle of drudgery that began before sunup and continued into the evening by lantern light. For the American people to get back on their feet, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt announced his New Deal, which included a plan to electrify rural areas. He envisioned increased farm productivity and that the burdens of manual labor would be eased. Initially, the Rural Electrification Administration, REA, was designed to make rural electrification loans to existing power companies. But the companies were reluctant and simply did not see profitability in extending lines into rural areas. They believed farm families couldn't afford electricity and really had no need for it. So, to get the job done, REA turned to a different business structure: the cooperative model. The rural electrification movement was now in motion. Behind it was the idea that people could help themselves through forming member-owned cooperatives. The people themselves were the real energy and strength of the movement. The peaceful advance of power lines across the countryside brought more than light. It brought hope. Our local story begins on December 20th, 1935, when about 400 local people gathered to discuss the possibility of electrifying rural Freeborn County. After almost a year of preliminary meetings and growing enthusiasm, Freeborn County Light and Power Company came into existence on December 8, 1936. Meanwhile, the same issue was being explored in Mower County. 20 Brownsdale area farmers were seeking a power line to be built from the Austin Municipal Power Plant. However, the financial burden of constructing the power line would rest with the farmers, provided they could get a loan to cover the cost. After several meetings, the two groups agreed to consolidate and became known as Freeborn-Mower Co-op Light and Power Association. And with an initial loan of $175,000 from REA, the co-op set into action. A sparsely furnished office was set up in Albert Lea, with a borrowed desk and an empty nail keg for a chair. Lewis Brown was the co-op's project manager. He traveled the dusty country roads, stopping to persuade farmers to become co-op members, explaining the benefits that electricity would bring, and that with membership they would also become owners of the new utility. He was peddling memberships in an organization that didn't exist except on paper. Skeptics wondered if setting poles, stringing electric wires, and contracting to purchase power would even be possible. After all, what did a bunch of farmers know about running a utility? Besides, the $2 sign-up fee was a lot of egg money. William Garvish, our cooperative's board president in 1937, was quoted as saying, "They said farmers lacked the experience or electrical knowledge to successfully operate an electric utility. Well, what we lacked in knowledge, we made up with determination. And so it was. Educational initiatives, demonstrations, poster campaigns, the REA circus and tent shows, and door-to-door visits were needed to show plans to expand the fledgling cooperative and explain the benefits of electric lights, motors, and appliances. There were also some other challenges. Farm homes, barns, and outbuildings needed to be wired in order to receive this exciting new hired hand, the wired hand of electricity. The cooperative's first line project was the ambitious construction of 175 miles of power line. After a wholesale power contract was secured, the line was energized on February 26, 1938. Early construction techniques were crude and relied on muscle power to dig holes, raise poles, and string conductor.
When I first started, we didn't have a digger truck, we didn't have a basket truck. We didn't have any of this modern equipment you see with our people using now. We'd carry the poles in by hand, we'd frame them, we'd set them by hand. Wintertime, when it was frozen, we'd go out there with a bucket of hot bars, 2-inch bars, and we'd drive the bar down, the guy'd come behind and use dynamite to open the hole, and then we'd complete the digging by hand. So,
with grit and determination, the REA boys pressed on, lighting the countryside farmstead by farmstead. Through the years, improved tools and standardized engineering techniques, along with mechanized equipment, helped bring down the cost of extending electric service. Rural line construction proceeded at a faster and faster pace. Change came to the countryside. Incandescent bulbs replaced sooty lamp chimneys. Electric milking machines allowed larger dairy herds. There was no more sweating over a hot wood stove. Electric water pumps and indoor plumbing were a dream come true. There were poultry brooders and heat lamps, and motors to grind grain and sharpen tools. Families gathered around radios to be entertained by dramas or hear news. However, the outbreak of World War II brought the construction of rural power lines to nearly a standstill when construction materials were diverted for the war effort. In the post-war years, Freeborn-Mower began to thrive and grow again as prosperity spread across America. New appliances and equipment meant time-saving convenience and an increased standard of living. It also meant new electric load for a growing co-op. By 1947, less than 10 years since the first line was energized, the cooperative was financially able to start allocating capital credits for the first time. A new headquarters building was built east of Albert Lea in 1952. The needs of the co-op were expanding, as were the uses of electricity in homes and on farmsteads. New electrical standards for appliances, lighting, heating, and wiring were promoted through themes like Progress with Power and Live Better Electrically. Irrigation became a new electric load for our cooperative. Underground electric cable was first used in the 1970s, but it did not perform as expected, causing a switch back to overhead construction. By 1983, underground cable had improved, and it was again included in construction plans. Economic development in rural communities grabbed hold in the 1980s. Increasing the diversification in the types of electric loads the co-op served would allow for the better management of fluctuating electrical demands. Water heater controls, dual fuel, and other new services like satellite television were offered. Dealing with Mother Nature's rage is an intrinsic part of our work. It can change on a moment's notice with lightning, tornadoes, or a harsh winter storm. The massive ice storm of 1991 was one for the record books, leaving our distribution system and several of the transmission feeder lines in complete devastation.
I remember very well the mega storm of '91. Halloween day started like any other day, but in the afternoon the air had kind of a damp, ominous feeling to it. About 7 o'clock we were called in on a non-weather related line outage west of Lyle. By that time we got there, the light rain was falling. After restoring the outage, the rains turned to thunderstorms, and call after call came in until all linemen were called in to go to work. Winds continued to increase, temperatures continued to fall. By 2 a.m. we were dealing with broken poles along with downed wires and trees. By dawn on November 1st, snow was mixing in and the wind was terrible. We could no longer keep up. Lines were going down faster than we could put them up. By noon we were told to go home. We were called in the next morning at 4 a.m. and informed that the entire membership was without power. Transmission lines were down, all of our substations were off. It was time for everyone to regroup, do assessment, call crews from other neighboring co-ops as well as contractors. This is when the true cooperative spirit comes through. All employees pitched in to do anything they could to assist in power restoration. We worked 16 plus hours a day for over 12 days before the last member was back in service. Though the work involved was back-breaking, what kept us going was the positive input from the members.
The system was rebuilt, even better than before. In 1991, we were awarded the prestigious Gold Medal Seal from the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association for outstanding customer service. Through the years, our employees have put their talents and professional training to use in service to the co-op members. We've made giant strides, always evolving with the times, challenges, and changing expectations, continually honing our operations and boosting our efficiency, expanding member outreach and education. The belief that affordable electricity would improve the standard of living and the economic competitiveness of the family farm has come to fruition. Electricity will remain a great equalizer for the economies of rural America as long as we keep it reliable and balanced with sound environmental stewardship.
We don't have stockholders. We don't have somebody else that we're making money for and then handing out to them. Anything that's left over is put into capital credits and returned to our members.
Freeborn-Mower Cooperative Services was built strong through cooperation, and our strength remains with our members.